Hey y'all, I'm so sorry I forgot to go over the vertical and horizontal line tests about functions and one-to-one functions. So we talked about what a function is. A function is a mapping or correspondence between one set called the domain, those are your x's, and a second set called the range, your f of x's or your y's, such that for every member of the domain, usually called x, there corresponds exactly one member in the range, usually called f of x or y, which I just said. So what that means is that when you put in an x value into the function, we talked about this in class, you can only possibly get one value for y. And one way you can test for that is to use what's called the vertical line test if you have the graph of the function. So if you run a vertical line anywhere through the function, if it only hits the function in one place, that means that for that x value, there is only one possible y value. So if you can run a vertical line through the function everywhere and only hit the function one time, that means that for every x, there's only one y. So you would know that is a function. So if you can run a vertical line through the graph and hit it in only one spot, that is a function. However, if you have something like this circle here and you run a vertical line through that function, you are going to hit it twice. There are places where you're going to hit it twice. And so that means it's not a function because for this x, in this case, -2, there are two different y values. So that means it's not a function. So it's just what we call a relation. Every mapping is a relation. We can say it's a relation. But a function is only when for every x, there's exactly one y. So the vertical line test helps you figure out, is it a function or is it not a function? It is a function if it only hits the graph one time when you put a vertical line through it. It's not a function if there's any place on that graph where it will hit it twice if you put a vertical line through it. So like on this circle, if you put a vertical line here, you can hit the graph in just one spot, but that doesn't matter. It only is if you can find some place on that function where you will hit it twice. If you put a vertical line through it, that means it's not a function because for some value of x, there's more than one value for y. So in this one over here, it doesn't matter where you put a vertical line through it, it will only hit it one time. And so that, for sure, is a function. The horizontal line test is for trying to find out if a function is what's called a one-to-one function. A one-to-one function is a mapping such that not only does each member of the domain map to exactly one member of the range, but every member of the range maps to exactly one member of the domain. Okay, so what that means is that not only is that true that for every x there's one y, but it's true that for every y there's exactly one x. Okay, so and you would only test for this if you're dealing with a function to begin with. So if you've done the vertical line test and this thing is a function, it only hits the graph in one spot, then you could check for it being a one-to-one function by using the horizontal line test. Let's just talk about if I have y is 1. Okay, so say y is 1. If I go through that spot, it only hits the graph one time. So that means for every y, there's only one x. So if y is 1, x is 2, definitely. If y is 3, I can see that x is definitely only one possible value. It doesn't hit the graph in more than one spot if I put a horizontal line through it. So that means it's one-to-one. Over here, if y is 2, for example, and I check, it has two different x values that go with it. So when y is 2, x could either be 3 or it could be -3. So this parabola is not a one-to-one function because a horizontal line through the function hits it more than one time. So even though this parabola is a function, the vertical line test works. It only hits the function in one spot. If you put a vertical line through it, it's not a one-to-one function because when you put a horizontal line through it, it hits it twice, which means that for certain values of y, there's more than one x value. right? So on this problem here, it says determine if each graph represents the graph of a function. If so, determine whether the graph is the graph of a one-to-one function. So to determine if it is a function, you use the vertical line test. So on this one, you can see it is not a function because it hits it 3 times, and it would probably more if you kept drawing it. So not a function because the vertical line test doesn't work. This is a function because the vertical line only hits it in one spot. So this is a function. This one is not a function because, well, wait a minute. Yes, it is a function. Sorry, I was thinking of this whole, that there wasn't a value for this x, but there is a value for this x. It's right there. So this is a function because no matter where you put a vertical line through it, it will only hit it one time. And right here, it's not going to hit it twice because this circle here means that the y value for that x is here, and this it's an inconsistent function, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, the vertical line only hits the function one time, so that is a function. This one isn't a function because for this spot right here, even though there's just one place that this happens, that vertical line hits it in 2 different places. So this x value has 2 different y values. So this is not a function. Okay, so for the ones that are functions, we want to go back and see if they are one-to-one functions. So for this function right here, b, if you throw a horizontal line through there, it's only going to hit it once, and it will only hit it once no matter where you put a horizontal line. So this is one-to-one. But C is not one-to-one because if you put a horizontal line right here, you're going to hit that function a bazillion times all along that line. So not one-to-one. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Vertical line test for a function, if it only hits the graph one time, it is a function. If it hits it more than once, it's not a function. If you have a function, then you can check for one-to-one function by using the horizontal line test. If it hits only once, it is a one-to-one function. If it hits it more than once, it is not a one-to-one function.